The morning at an elementary school in Fukushima began like any other. A teacher opened a restroom that had been closed for some time due to technical problems. The water hadn't been draining properly. Plumbers assumed it was a simple clog, nothing unusual. But when workers opened the sewage system, they discovered something far worse than a blockage. Inside the pipe was a human body. The body was in a fetal position, compressed, curled inward, trapped inside a narrow pipe measuring about 28 centimeters in diameter. Later, the identity would be confirmed. It was Naoyuki Kanno, a respected executive at a nuclear power plant, not a teenager, not a drifter, not someone with a criminal past. A nuclear plant executive found inside the septic system of a school restroom. How did he get there? And the most unsettling question of all, could he have gotten there on his own? When the police first delivered their statement, the wording sounded confident. According to investigators, Naoyuki Kanno acted alone. There were no signs of third-party involvement. Surveillance cameras did not capture any suspicious movement. There were no signs of a struggle, no indications of forced restraint. The version presented was as follows. Late at night, Naoyuki drove to the grounds of the elementary school. He parked his car nearby. He then entered the schoolyard, presumably climbing over the fence. Investigators suggested that his target was the women's restroom. According to the official hypothesis, he climbed onto the roof of the building, located a ventilation or maintenance hatch connected to the sewage system, and attempted to look inside through a vertical pipe. This explanation was based on the position of the body and the structure of the system. Police stated that he removed part of his clothing to reduce his body size and began descending into the pipe, allegedly intending to gain access to the toilet stall from below. However, the pipe proved too narrow. He became stuck. He lost the ability to move. Ultimately, death occurred due to asphyxiation or hypothermia. Investigators classified the incident as an accident. At first glance, the sequence appears logical. There was unlawful entry. There was a proposed motive, voyeurism. There was the physical fact of becoming lodged inside the pipe. There was no direct evidence of outside violence. But when you pause and try to imagine this sequence of actions in real life, a number of unsettling details emerge. First, preparation. To carry out such a plan, a person would need prior knowledge that the pipe's structure allowed visibility. He would need to understand how the sewage system was configured. He would have to be certain that the chosen access point actually led to a restroom and not to a sealed section of plumbing. Where did that certainty come from? Second, risk. Even a quick glance at a pipe with a diameter of roughly 28 centimeters triggers an instinctive reaction. It is a narrow, enclosed space with no room to turn around. One slip, and the body becomes wedged inside. Would an adult voluntarily begin descending into a vertical cylinder without any safety mechanism, without a rope, without any way to pull himself back out? And if so, what did he believe would happen? Third, the physics of movement. To enter the pipe, it is not enough to simply lean forward. One must force the shoulders through, then the chest, then the hips. Any slight narrowing of the structure could become the exact point of entrapment. Investigators noted that he removed part of his clothing, but the neatly folded shirt raises a new question. If someone is acting in haste, driven by impulse, are they inclined toward careful organization? Or does such detail suggest something more deliberate? And finally, time. To enter the school grounds, climb onto the roof, open a hatch, and begin descending. This requires a specific sequence of actions. It is not an instantaneous decision. It is a chain of steps. Each step, an opportunity to stop. Each step, a moment to reconsider the risk. Police concluded that all of these actions were taken voluntarily and without coercion. Yet for many observers, this version leaves a lingering sense of a logical gap. Why would a successful executive, a man with a stable career, choose such an extreme and dangerous method to act on a hidden desire? Why were there no signs of prior behavior of this kind? Why was the method so fatally risky that it left almost no chance of survival? The official version closes the case. But does it close the questions? Or does it simply offer the explanation that is easiest to accept? If the official version is a linear narrative, the actual details of the case resemble a puzzle, one whose pieces do not always fit neatly together. To understand where the tension truly lies, we have to break the picture apart. 1. Physical absurdity. The pipe in which the body was discovered had a diameter of approximately 28 centimeters. That number sounds technical, almost sterile. But when visualized, it becomes something else entirely. A circle narrower than the shoulders of an adult man. To get inside, a person would have had to remove part of his clothing and physically force himself into a narrow vertical shaft. This is not a simple bend forward. It is a conscious, gradual compression of the body into a confined cylinder. Every centimeter, resistance, every movement, risk. The question is not whether he could physically fit inside. The fact that his body was found there confirms that he could. The question is different. How does such an action begin? A man standing on a rooftop looks into the opening of a pipe. He sees a narrow entrance. He understands the descent is vertical. He does not know the exact depth. He does not know where the space ends. And yet, he chooses to go down. Can someone voluntarily take such a step without certainty of being able to climb back out? At what moment does the body realize that backward movement is no longer possible? And if this was a mistake, at what point did it become irreversible? The body was found in a fetal position, compressed, curled inward, as if trying to reduce its volume or protect itself. That posture feels less like observation and more like struggle against space itself. 2. The mystery of the belongings' clothing was found neatly folded at the scene, not thrown aside, not crumpled, not torn, neatly folded. If a person acts impulsively, driven by sudden desire, is careful order typical behavior? Or does neatness suggest a different state of mind? Calmer, more deliberate? Another detail, the shoes. One shoe was found inside the pipe. The other was discovered in a nearby river. How did it get there? If we assume the shoe slipped off accidentally, logic would suggest both shoes might be found in similar areas. Instead, they were separated by distance. A shoe in the river creates the impression of movement. An accidental fall? Or external interference? Investigators reported no signs of a struggle. And yet, the distribution of personal belongings remains unusual. If a person became trapped inside a pipe, how does a shoe end up beyond school grounds? It is a small detail, but small details are often what generate doubt. 3. The car with the keys. Naoyuki Kanno's car was found parked near the school. The keys were inside. If someone intends to return to their vehicle, would they leave the keys inside? Perhaps it was carelessness, perhaps forgetfulness. But in the context of other inconsistencies, it creates a break in logic. To enter school grounds at night, a person must act cautiously. He must assess risk. He must be alert. And yet, he leaves his keys in the car, inviting theft? Or perhaps returning to the vehicle was never part of the plan? That question remains unanswered. 4. The reputational divide. The final piece of the puzzle is the man himself. Colleagues, neighbors, and acquaintances describe Naoyuki as reserved, a family man, a long-serving executive, someone not associated with scandal. Of course, outward respectability does not eliminate the possibility of hidden sides. History contains many examples of double lives, but in this case, there were no prior incidents, no complaints, no rumors suggesting voyeuristic behavior. If the official version is correct, then this extreme and deadly act would have been the first recorded manifestation. Assembling the puzzle. Each element can be assembling the puzzle. Each element can be explained individually. Yes, an adult man could physically force himself into a narrow pipe. Yes, a shoe could slip off. Yes, keys could be forgotten. But when all of these details exist within the same story, something feels misaligned. The physical difficulty, the strange placement of belongings, the illogical handling of the car, the contrast with his public reputation. The puzzle does not offer a clear alternative picture, but it creates space for doubt. And it is within that space that theories begin to emerge. Theories. When facts fail to form a flawless line, an investigation inevitably enters the realm of hypotheses. It is important to remember, a hypothesis is not an accusation. It is a method of testing which version best explains the totality of details. In the case of Naoyuki Kanno, 3 main scenarios are most frequently discussed. 1. The official scenario. An accident. According to this version, everything unfolded as the result of a single impulse. Naoyuki acted alone, without the involvement of any third party. He entered the school grounds, climbed onto the roof, opened a maintenance hatch, and attempted to carry out a hidden intention. The pipe was narrower than he anticipated. He became stuck. There was no help. Death followed. What supports this version? First, the absence of clear signs of struggle. No evidence of external violence was documented at the scene. No clues indicating another person's presence. Second, the position of the body inside the pipe could be interpreted as the result of attempting either to descend further or to climb back out independently. Third, in cases involving deviant behavior, extreme and risky manifestations of hidden impulses do sometimes occur. But what raises doubts? The physical risk. To begin descending into a vertical pipe approximately 28 centimeters in diameter, a person must consciously accept a near certainty of becoming trapped. Is it reasonable to expect that an adult man, not under the influence of substances and without a known history of such behavior, would take that step? And then, there is the neatly folded clothing. It does not directly contradict impulsivity, but neither does it fully align with it. The official version answers most procedural questions, but it leaves psychological uncertainty. What must be happening in a person's mind to take such a risk? 2. The revenge or homicide theory. The second hypothesis is more disturbing. It suggests that the death may not have been accidental. After the Fukushima nuclear disaster, public tension was extremely high. Executives connected to the nuclear plant were under intense scrutiny. Anger, blame, and distrust became part of the social climate. Could Naoyuki have become the target of someone's resentment? Could a professional or personal conflict have escalated into violence? Within this hypothesis, it is imagined that the body may have been placed inside the pipe after death, creating the appearance of an accident or deviant act. What supports this theory? The unusual distribution of belongings, a shoe in the river, neatly folded clothing, a car left with keys inside. These details are sometimes interpreted as signs of external interference. But what contradicts it? Investigators reported no signs of struggle or injuries consistent with forced restraint. There are no official records of threats or conflicts preceding his death. Moving a body into such a narrow pipe would require significant effort and carry a high risk of being noticed. Moreover, a revenge theory requires a clear motive and identifiable individuals, and none have surfaced publicly. Yet, for some observers, the mere connection to the nuclear plant makes the idea of violent death emotionally persuasive, even if the evidence remains weak. 3. The suicide theory. The third hypothesis is perhaps the most psychologically complex. Could Naoyuki have intentionally chosen the school toilet pipe as a method of suicide? At first glance, this seems highly unusual. Suicide methods are typically either quick or symbolically charged. A confined sewage pipe is a rare and extreme scenario. But if interpreted as an act of hidden self-punishment or psychological distress, the theory takes on a different tone. Was he under pressure? Was he experiencing a private crisis unknown to those around him? Could the method reflect a deeply personal psychological conflict? What supports this theory? The absence of struggle can be interpreted as the absence of external interference. The neatly folded clothing may suggest intention. The car left with keys inside may indicate that returning was never planned. But what challenges it? There was no suicide note, no public evidence of severe depression, no clear signs of preparation for ending his life, and most importantly, the physical difficulty of the method. Suicide rarely involves prolonged struggle in a confined space with an uncertain outcome. This method would have been slow, painful, and unpredictable. Where is the truth? 3 versions: an accident, homicide, suicide. Each explains part of the facts. None explains everything without residue, and perhaps that is why the case continues to be discussed. Not because there is proof of a conspiracy, but because there are gaps between the details. When the official narrative is logically possible, but psychologically difficult to accept, doubt survives. And perhaps the real question is not which version is correct, but whether we are willing to accept that sometimes tragedy can be absurd, strange, and unexplained, without hidden meaning and without malicious intent. Final Naoyuki Kanno's case is officially closed. In the documents, an accident. In the reports, no signs of violence. In the statistics, another tragic death. But beyond the wording, something else remains. A feeling. The feeling that the picture has been assembled, but not fully explained. A pipe narrower than a man's shoulders. A body compressed in a fetal position. Neatly folded clothing. One shoe inside the system. Another in the river. A car left with the keys inside. Each detail alone is not proof of a crime, but together, they create a space of silence. And in that silence, questions begin to form. Can we truly imagine a grown man standing on a school rooftop at night, looking into a narrow opening, deciding to descend? Can we believe that all of this was the result of a single impulse? Can we accept that none of the strange details require further explanation? Or perhaps the truth is much simpler, and that is precisely why it feels unacceptable. Sometimes tragedies happen without deep symbolism, without conspiracy, without a hidden enemy. Sometimes human error can look almost impossible, simply because we resist accepting its absurdity. But there is another side. Stories connected to major disasters, public tension, and positions of high responsibility are rarely perceived neutrally. When a man associated with a nuclear power plant dies in a region shaped by technological catastrophe, society inevitably searches for hidden meaning. We tend to see patterns, even where none may exist. And yet, close your eyes and imagine that night. A dark school rooftop, cold air, a metal hatch, a vertical shaft descending into darkness. What was he thinking at that moment? Was it impulse? Despair? Or something that never entered the scope of the investigation? Perhaps the answers will forever remain inside that pipe, just as his final minutes did. This case is not only about sensation, not only about conspiracy theories. It is about the fragility of reputation, about how one official conclusion can permanently reshape the perception of a person, and about how some stories leave behind not facts, but a shadow. Do you believe the police truly exhausted every possible version? Or is there something in this case that will never be spoken aloud? Tell us how you see this story. Sometimes the loudest sound is the silence that remains after a case is closed.